All right, so again, the basic idea here is that January 6th is an excuse for everything that we want to do, ever and forever, right? Because Republicans are fonts of misinformation, therefore we have to have social media shutting them down. Representative Pramila Jayapal, by the way, she says that this should become a thing, that Twitter and Facebook should just shut down anyone who disagrees with her because, again, threat to democracy, right? It's always some deep threat that requires basic freedoms to be curbed.
It's no secret that our social media companies have been part of their algorithms promoting disinformation. And I think that these steps are important, but frankly, a little too little and a little too late. The reality is it's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene. All over Twitter, social media, Facebook, all of these companies have been using algorithms that are just about clickbait, not about truth. And so if we are going to take on the disinformation that's out there, the big lie, and everything else that goes with it, then yes, this is a part of it, but it's got to be much, much more.
We have to crack down on the First Amendment in order to save the First Amendment. We have to crack down on your ability to vote with a certain amount of certainty in order to save voting. Right? It's amazing how often they use this logic. In fact, we have to curb all of the traditional institutions of American democracy in order to save American democracy, according to Professor Jedediah Britton-Purdy, a professor of constitutional law at Columbia. He has a piece in the New York Times called "The Republican Party is Succeeding Because We Are Not a True Democracy." Oh, so when you win, it's a democracy, and when you lose, it's not a true democracy. I kind of see how this is working. The January 6th attack would not have happened in a genuine democracy, says Britton-Purdy. Really? Because I feel like the entire summer of 2020, before Trump and January 6th, before any of that happened, attacks on federal courthouses in Portland, massive riots across the United States, like dozens, if not hundreds of riots across the United States. It wouldn't have happened so you explain to me, when exactly was there a genuine democracy in the United States and no violence involved ever? What was that period exactly? Says Professor Britton-Purdy, the attack was the most acute symptom of the political crisis that Donald Trump incited by refusing to admit defeat in the 2020 election, but the roots of the crisis run deep into the undemocratic features of our constitutional system. At a basic level, today's Republican Party succeeds only because the Electoral College, the Senate, and the Supreme Court all tilt in its favor. That system has handed conservatives a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, despite the fact that only one Republican has won the presidential popular vote after 1988. A party doesn't have to persuade majorities it has the best vision for the country. It only has to persuade a selective minority that the other side is a mortal threat. Its grasp on power may be too tenuous for the party to govern effectively, but it has offered conservatives a fine perch to weaken economic and environmental regulation, appoint conservative judges, and launch attacks on the democratic system itself. In a more democratic system, says this professor of constitutional law, the Republican Party's extreme elements would have been sent packing long before they stormed the Capitol because they couldn't muster enough votes to win a national election. Instead, they have perfected minority rule as a path to political success. An anti-democratic system has bred an anti-democratic party. The remedy is to democratize our so-called democracy. Yes, pure majoritarianism. What the founders called mob rule will certainly make things much better, because when the mob rules, nothing bad ever happens. When you have just a pure majority cramming down its opinions on the minority without any sort of hampering mechanisms, then only good comes from that, as we know from none of world history ever. This is the basic idea for the Democrats. If we just go to pure majoritarianism, then it'll be good. By the way, if they start to lose in a pure majoritarian state, like let's say that the next Republican presidential candidate in 2024 wins a popular vote, then we'll be back to, well, what systems are broken here that could have allowed this to possibly happen? Again, January 6th is all about exploitation. It was never about January 6th purely. And that is the problem. If it had been just about January 6th, we all would have agreed. If it's about the exploitation, then we all ought to not agree, because it is really, really kind of gross to use a horrible riot on January 6th, not nearly as horrible in terms of property damage or loss of life as anything that happened in 2020, by the way, but a horrible image for the United States, to use that as an excuse to batter away traditional institutions like the filibuster, as well as the state control over voting rights, in order to shore up your chances in 2022. That seems like much more of a threat to democracy than 200 droogs invading the Capitol building, getting themselves arrested and thrown in jail. Who's got two thumbs and wants you to like and subscribe?